What do you actually know about drugs? Do you know what the different types really do, or what the smallest dosage is that can kill you? Or which drug is just straight up the deadliest? Today we're answering all of that and more as we explain every illegal drug. Cocaine. Let's kick things off with one of the classics. It was once a key ingredient in Coca-Cola, though it never actually was when it was on the market as a soda. It was used by Sherlock Holmes and Sigmund Freud alike, and possibly single-handedly kept Wall Street running at all hours during the 1980s. Cocaine's derived from the coca plant, native to the Andes Mountains. Historically, the Aymara people would chew coca leaves during their religious ceremonies, releasing a low-level dose of the plant's active ingredient into their systems. In the 19th century, European scientists isolated the chemical, and cocaine as we know it today was born. Cocaine induces temporary feelings of euphoria and confidence, as well as increased alertness and energy in many users. Other side effects can include dilated pupils, nausea, heightened senses, restlessness, irritation, and constriction of the blood vessels that can result in headaches, high blood pressure, or an irregular heartbeat. At first, cocaine was seen as something of a wonder drug. It was used as an anesthetic, added to cough medicine, wine, cigars, even non-alcoholic beverages as well. Surely nothing could go wrong. Well, actually, lots of things went wrong. As cocaine use spread, it soon became apparent that the drug was highly addictive. Arthur Conan Doyle even made Sherlock Holmes quit using it in 1904, as the addictive nature of the drug became more widely known. But cocaine wasn't just addictive, it was also, in the wrong doses and under the wrong circumstances, deadly. Many drugs have a lethal dosage threshold that's easy to define, but what makes cocaine scary is that it's not one of them. The amount of cocaine that can cause an overdose or cocaine toxicity can vary widely from person to person, depending on their medical history, drug tolerance developed over time, and frequent use, as well as the purity of the cocaine itself. Of course, the more cocaine someone uses, the more likely they are to cross that personal threshold. But what happens when they do? When a person uses cocaine, it binds to monoamine transporters, neurotransmitter receptors, plasma proteins, voltage-gated ion channels, and metabolic enzymes in the body. But if you're not a biologist, a doctor, or just someone who is way too into learning about anatomy, what does all that actually mean? Like, what does it do to someone? A severe overdose of cocaine will unfold in 3 stages, each worse than the last. The first stage is characterized by headaches, nausea, vertigo, that irregular heartbeat we mentioned earlier, rapid and shallow breathing, increased body temperature, paranoia, and aggression. These flags are redder than a boiled lobster, and if you don't get medical attention immediately when experiencing them, then you're just as cooked. If that medical attention is not received, then stage 2 kicks in. This stage is characterized by a risk of brain damage, seizures, hypertension, a steadily climbing body temperature, and heart arrhythmia. Once seizures have entered the equation, the danger has skyrocketed. Seizures, brain damage, and heart arrhythmia are nothing to mess with. But if left unchecked, the effects of cocaine toxicity can get even worse. Stage 3 brings in the threat of loss of reflexes, hypotension, cardiac arrest, and respiratory failure. At this point, a person may suffer a heart attack, suffocate, or slip into a coma and die. Cocaine can be even more dangerous if it's been cut with other drugs, a phenomenon that is becoming unfortunately more and more common. But put a pin in that for now, we'll get to it later. Speaking of parties, the next drug on our list is a pretty common party drug, but too high of a dose can mean that the next party you attend is your funeral. Let's talk about X, baby. Let's talk about ecstasy. MDMA, ecstasy, Molly, whatever name you choose to call it, makes people want to dance. It derives its classic nickname from the euphoria it induces, or a sense of ecstasy. This synthetic psychoactive also heightens the senses, which makes it a favorite among ravers, clubbers, and Coachella aficionados. It works by triggering a release of dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine in the brain, producing a rush of pleasure and excitement. However, there are dangers that come with using MDMA that can cause a user's vital signs to drop faster than the beat. An overdose of the drug can cause increased heart rate and arrhythmia, dysregulated body temperature, severe overheating, muscle breakdown, kidney failure, and seizures. Considering the environments where MDMA is most popular are often poorly ventilated and packed with throngs of dancing strangers, you could see where things can become tricky fast. Regular ecstasy use, as well as overdose, is linked to hyponatremia, or a potentially lethal lack of sodium in the blood. Excessive sweating caused by heightened body temperature, as well as vigorous dancing combined with electrolyte-free water intake, can result in brain swelling and death in extreme cases. But how much is too much? According to Josie Smith of Public Health Wales, any dose higher than 120 milligrams can be very dangerous. Here is where the trouble comes in with MDMA. Most people are taking it in the pill form, and they have no way of knowing how much they're actually taking. This was less of an issue 10 years ago when the average strength of a tablet was between 70 and 80 milligrams, but as of a 2018 article from BBC, many tablets average a dose of around 156 milligrams, and some go as high as 300 milligrams in a single pill. So please be mindful of that and keep an eye on yourselves and others in settings where people may be using MDMA. And maybe keep some electrolyte-rich non-alcoholic drinks on hand and party on, but party safely. Meth. Okay, so we're starting to move away from the quote fun drugs. This has been your warning. You could say that from here on out this video is Breaking Bad. Sorry, couldn't resist. Now it's time to talk about meth. Methamphetamine, particularly crystal meth, was linked to nearly 33,000 deaths in the United States in 2021. From 2015 to 2019, the number of methamphetamine-related overdose deaths in the United States tripled, and 2.5 million Americans over the age of 12 reported using meth in 2021. Meth works by stimulating the central nervous system and increasing the output of several neurotransmitters, such as dopamine, which is linked to the reward pathways in the brain. It results in increased alertness, physical activity, elevated mood, and decreased appetite. Long-term use can have consequences such as aggression, mood swings, tooth decay, malnutrition, and psychosis, including the delusion that there are bugs crawling underneath your skin. That can lead to chronic skin picking in long-term meth users. But let's not dwell on that particularly distressing image. Let's talk about something else distressing instead: overdoses. And there are two types of meth overdose: chronic and acute. Chronic overdoses result from meth use over time and often results from death from organ failure. Symptoms of this looming overdose include tooth loss, which is what's often called meth mouth, and often involves severe mental health issues and cognitive decline. Acute overdoses happen suddenly, and they are common in first-time meth users. They occur when someone takes too large of a dose and the body experiences immediate organ damage, heart attacks, strokes, and eventually death. Warning signs of an acute meth overdose include sudden, dangerous spikes in body temperature and blood pressure, chest pain, confusion, anxiety, dilated pupils, rapid eye movement, vomiting, nausea, trouble breathing, and convulsions. Like with cocaine, what makes meth so scary is that it is difficult to determine the exact amount that will trigger an acute overdose. The overdose threshold can be affected by a person's age, mass, metabolism, pre-existing health conditions, and the method by which they are ingesting the drug, whether swallowing, snorting, smoking, or injecting it. The best advice when it comes to meth comes from an old anti-drug PSA slogan: "Not even once." PCP. Phencyclidine, or PCP, is also known as angel dust, but there is nothing angelic about it. When PCP first hit the news cycle in the 1980s, there was a great deal of coverage dedicated to its tendency to cause people to transform into super strong rage monsters, committing random and horrific acts of violence. Many of these accounts were greatly exaggerated, but they did get one thing right: PCP is extremely dangerous. It just so happens that the person it's most dangerous to is the one taking it. PCP was first developed as an anesthetic and analgesic, that is, a medical drug that would both numb the body and relieve pain. But it quickly gained prominence as a recreational drug for the feelings of sedation and euphoria it induced. Something that makes PCP relatively unique is how long it stays in the system once taken. It has a half-life of 21 hours, a full elimination window of 42, and it can stay in the liver and kidneys for even longer than that. PCP overdose symptoms include catatonia, sudden onset schizophrenia and psychosis, involuntary movements, high blood pressure, and seizures. PCP is also unique in how low its threshold is for overdose, at around an average of just 20 milligrams. That's about the weight of a single grain of rice. And anywhere past that point is almost a guarantee that seizures, coma, and eventually death will follow. Its nickname may invoke heaven, but PCP is a hell of a drug, and best avoided at all costs. Speaking of drugs that made the news for supposedly turning people into monsters, only one drug on this list has been forever linked to anxieties about a zombie apocalypse, and that's bath salts. No, not the kind you buy for a Secret Santa gift when you don't know what else to get. Well, maybe they are that kind. I don't know what kind of gift exchanges you're going to. But in 2012, these synthetic lab-made stimulants that produce a high similar to meth made headlines when they were linked to a horrific crime in Miami, Florida. A man nicknamed the Miami Zombie attacked another man and was seen biting off parts of his face. A toxicology report later determined that there were no bath salts in the attacker's system, but the link between the drug and face eating was already solidified in the public imagination. However, just because bath salts don't turn people into face-eating zombies doesn't mean they aren't extremely dangerous. In the words of Mark Ryan, doctor of pharmacology, director of the Louisiana Poison Center, and assistant professor of clinical emergency medicine at Louisiana State University Health Sciences, take all the bad attributes of ecstasy, PCP, LSD, cocaine, methamphetamine, and lump them together, and that's what you get with bath salts. Signs of an overdose include rapid heartbeat, sweating, seizures, strokes, and cardiovascular collapse. According to the New England Journal of Medicine, an accidental overdose on bath salts is dangerously easy, particularly because dosage instructions included on many packages sold by dealers recommend dosages far higher than would be safe. Because dose and purity are so difficult to determine, experts have warned that any consumption of bath salts at all could potentially lead to overdose. Probably better to just stick to the kind that actually go in the bath. Heroin. When it comes to street drugs, it would be difficult to name one that has ruined more lives than heroin. Heroin overdose killed music legends like Jim Morrison and Janis Joplin, robbed the world of beloved comedians like Chris Farley and Jim Belushi, and wreaked havoc on the lives and bodies of musicians during the golden age of jazz. An estimated 1 million people in the U.S. have a heroin use disorder, and around 10,000 Americans die from heroin overdoses every year. The drug has been illegal in the United States since 1924, but its euphoric effects and highly addictive nature have caused it to stick around just the same. Heroin is an opiate derived from morphine, which is in turn derived from the seeds of the opium poppy plant. It's known for inducing intensely pleasurable feelings and a sensation of weightlessness, and it's also known for being extremely easy to overdose on. A lethal dose of heroin is about 30 milligrams, if the heroin is pure, that is, but we'll get to that. And the effects of heroin overdose are some of the most comprehensively devastating to the body out of any drug on this list. When there is an excess of heroin in the body, the blood pressure begins to lower to dangerous levels, capable of triggering a pulmonary edema, and from there, a heart attack. One symptom of heroin overdose is intense, overwhelming drowsiness. And while some drug overdoses have a host of violent symptoms, a person overdosing on heroin may simply fall asleep. They might even appear peaceful. And this is where their condition is at its most precarious. While sleeping, a heroin user experiencing an overdose will find that their breathing slows down until it stops entirely. Essentially, the body, which normally is able to keep breathing without conscious thought, literally forgets how. They simply fall asleep, stop breathing, and never wake up again. Of all the drugs we've covered so far, a heroin overdose is the easiest to miss until it is far too late. Surely that's the end of the video, right? After all, what drug could possibly be worse than heroin? Okay, we can't keep this up. You already know there's something even worse than heroin. It's the drug that single-handedly ushered in a new dark chapter in the American opioid crisis. None other than fentanyl. Surely you knew this was coming. It's impossible to avoid hearing about the fentanyl crisis in a climate where drug use and deaths due to overdose on it have been on the rise since 2021. Fentanyl is without exaggeration the deadliest drug in the world, 50 times stronger than heroin and 100 times stronger than morphine. Fentanyl packs a devastating punch with a lethal dose of only 2 milligrams. When in pure powder form, that isn't even enough to cover the surface of a dime. So take everything we just told you about heroin and multiply it by 50. Then factor in how cheap fentanyl is to manufacture and traffic compared to other less deadly drugs, and you can see why the CDC declared it the leading cause of death among U.S. adults between the ages of 18 and 45. Even those who are not deliberately seeking out fentanyl need to be wary of it, because it is so cheap to manufacture and it is so potent in such small amounts. Many other drugs are being cut with it without the knowledge of the buyer. These include heroin, meth, Xanax, cocaine, Adderall, and oxycodone, better known as the drug that started the opioid crisis as we know it today. As bad as oxy is, fentanyl is much, much worse. Signs of a fentanyl overdose include pinpoint pupils, shallow or even no breathing, lips or fingernails becoming blue or grayish, a gurgling wheezing or heavy snoring sound, and a lack of response to stimulus. Though fentanyl is incredibly deadly, there is a way to treat an overdose in the moment and save someone's life. Naloxone or Narcan can be administered in the event of an overdose to buy the patient some more time to make it to the hospital and receive life-saving care. When it comes to keeping yourself and your community safe, there is no better weapon than knowledge. Now go watch 50 Insane Facts About Weed or this other video instead.